Hello internet friends, my name is Ashley and every Sunday I'm going to be researching the psychology, sociology, and biology of why we are the way that we are and how we can improve. I don't really know why I'm doing this. I guess it's just going to serve as an outlet for my thoughts. I think about this kind of stuff a lot, and I know I'm not the only one that struggles with depression or anxiety, overcoming addiction. So I think we can all stand to be a little bit better to ourselves and others and learn some stuff while we're at it. A little bit of background on myself. I am a state certified peer recovery specialist, and I also have my bachelor's degree in communications and a minor in sociology because I just really find what shapes us fascinating. Like, I'm obsessed with learning about why things are the way they are. So if you find that interesting, you are in the right place. Just a little disclaimer though, I'm not a therapist, nutritionist, or anything of the sort. I'm just someone who is constantly trying to improve my life. So today I thought I would start my first video off with neuroplasticity because it's really useful information if you're someone who's trying to change your habits, improve your lifestyle, or if you or someone you know has suffered a brain injury. This is really useful information. I apologize in advance. I will get better at these videos as we go along, and my videos will also become more specific. This is kind of a broad topic because this kind of will serve as the foundation for a lot of my other videos, like especially when I talk about addiction or setting goals, and I'll do a video on how gratitude and meditation can literally change your brain. So that all kind of comes back to neuroplasticity. So what is neuroplasticity, you ask? I will tell you. It is the brain's ability to recognize itself by forming new connections and pathways between nerve cells called neurons. It allows the neurons to compensate for injury and disease and to adjust their activities in response to new situations or to changes in their environment. So if you're like me, I don't really have a very logical thinking brain, so I have to come up with ways for stuff to make sense to me. So basically, neuroplasticity is just from the time we're born, the nerve cells in our brains are forming pathways and patterns, and that's why it's so hard to break habits as we get older, because it becomes second nature to us. That's why children with developing brains learn easier, because their pathways are just starting to develop and their neurons are just starting to make connections, and as we become an adult, our pathways are kind of just set in their way. But yeah, when you're younger, your neurons like, yes, like, let's do this job that we came here to do, like, let's form pathways. Knowing this information is really freaking empowering if you think about it, because if we know how neurons work and how patterns can change, then we can control how they get rewired. Side note, that is why people when they get addicted to drugs, or this is Abby. So yes, when people get addicted to drugs or alcohol or sugar, that's like the main reason it becomes such a hard habit to break, because I mean, one, you're messing with your brain chemistry, but you're literally forming these pathways and training your brain to think that you need that stuff to function. So that's a different video, but just wanted to throw that in there. Now that we know what neuroplasticity is, I think a good place to start talking about it is how much we are on autopilot, because since we've formed these pathways and signals in our brain to do daily tasks. I mean, it's their job. We're on autopilot constantly, but that's why it's so important for us to be aware of our daily routine and how it impacts us, and if it's positively or negatively impacting us. A good example of this, I'm sure we've all been there. If you drive, you'll be driving to work and all of a sudden not really know where you're at, where you're going. You're just like, how did I get from point A to point B? And this is because we're just zoning out and we're on autopilot because we do these daily things that have really strong pathways and connections in our brains. Or when you get ready in the morning, you probably get a pot of coffee going or scroll through social media, and this can be really destructive if you are trying to improve yourself or change a habit, because the very first step to changing a habit is awareness. Like, that is everything. Because once we start being aware and paying attention to our surroundings, then we can start noticing when we do whatever habit we're trying to change and start observing why we engage in that habit and then figure out a solution. For example, if we hit the snooze button 10 times, it's obviously because we want that extra 15 to 20 minutes of extra sleep. I'm guilty of this too, but how much does that really help? Like 15 to 20 minutes of sleep. I can wake up at 6 a.m. or 11 a.m. and I am equally as tired. Like, my brain just doesn't like waking up. That's all there is to it. But if you got up 20 minutes earlier, you would have time to get some light exercise in, some stretches, write down what you're grateful for, set intentions for your day, and start following through with those intentions, because then you'll literally be able to rewire your brain and it'll get easier and easier, I promise. Seriously, challenge yourself and you will see a difference. And in case you were wondering how much of the time we are actually on autopilot, 46.9% of the time, every single day, we are on autopilot. That's half of the time. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend my life half living. That's insane. And a lot of it is because technology and, we're always staring at our phones, which, is fine, but like I said, when it's becoming to a point where you want to change something or it's, being self-destructive, it's time to start being a little bit more conscious throughout your day. Like, I know with me, I really struggle with organization and just putting things back in their spot and making sure everything has a spot. And so I'm really starting to try to pay attention instead of, when I come home from work, I just want to sit down. So again, my brain is on autopilot because I do this every day. I come home, put my bag down, and sit on the couch and, maybe turn on the TV, eat, whatever. So since I'm so used to doing that, and all my life I've been like that, I need to disrupt my pathways and be like, hey, let's start paying a little bit more attention. And so now when I see something that needs put away, I will put it back in its spot, and in time this will become second nature. Could you imagine what we could do with our time if it was spent better than being on autopilot 46.9% of the time and just being more conscious of our actions and choices? So obviously neuroplasticity is very impactful in our lives. So let's now talk about how we can rewire it a little bit. Muscle memory is a really good example of how neuroplasticity works. I had a friend whose mother was an artist and she lost her eyesight but she could still draw a really good rose because she was so used to doing that, and her brain still knew how to send those signals to her hands. So that's a great example of muscle memory. But there is a use it or lose it concept to this, because your neural pathways, if not used repeatedly and often, they will start to weaken. Just like muscles, if you stop going to the gym, you're gonna get weaker. So for those of us that were maybe off work during the quarantine shutdown, we stopped doing our daily activities. So, you know, a lot of us probably started doing other things and forming new pathways. So when we went back to work, it was probably a little bit difficult to get back into the swing of things, because that's just how your brain is working. And on the flip side, there is a use it and improve it concept. So training that focuses on a certain part of that brain will result in improvement of that function, which is why they say practice makes perfect. Neuroplasticity is also used in the medical field a lot for all sorts of recovery. An example would be if a person loses function of an arm or a leg due to stroke or an accident, whatever the case may be, they start to not use that arm or a leg because it hurts too much, or, you know, it's just too difficult to use. So the treatment for this is called constraint-induced movement therapy, which is when the doctor, nurse, whatever, constrains the good arm or leg, so it forces the patient to, you know, start utilizing the hurt leg or limb so they can start strengthening those neuron pathways again and strengthen the function of that arm or leg. Sorry, that was hard to get through. I'm not good at medical stuff. Another cool example I read at least like 4 times in like different articles. It was crazy how much this, you know, popped up all over the place. But I guess in London, taxi drivers have to take a test and memorize all of the roads in the city. So obviously it's not an easy task. And researchers decided to look at the brains before and after the taxi drivers took the test, and there was a significant change in the hippocampus, which is the memory part of the brain. So that part of their brain was literally like firing off more signals and everything because they had to repetitively study and memorize these streets. So I think that's really cool, and knowing this information isn't enough. Like, we have to apply it to our lives, which is the hard part. Like, all of this stuff is like, well, duh, that's how the brain works. It does its thing. But if we apply it to our life, we can freaking do anything that we want. We can be who we want to be. So no more excuses, including myself. You're probably wondering why I'm just rambling on about this information that I think is super cool. Well, it kind of all ties back into me trying to figure out how to have less anxiety and depression all the freaking time. Because when we know how the brain works, we can, like I said, rewire it. We can deal with anxiety, change habits, reach goals, overcome addiction. There's like just overall create a healthier lifestyle. And I promise you, if we apply this information to our lives, we can absolutely become the best version of ourselves. And I know that sounds really cheesy, and I think people say it way too much, like reach your full potential, be the best version of you. But for real, if we know why and how we are the way we are, then we're not allowed to be victims of circumstance anymore, because we then are making a conscious choice to, you know, continue that lifestyle or habit, or change it. That's our only two options, people. One study even found that depression and anxiety disorders can cause a negative plasticity, quote, negative plasticity. I'm assuming that just means, you know, it's disrupting your normal pathways, which I know a lot of people say that depression can lead to memory loss or lapses in memory, and you know, it's all affecting the brain. Research also suggests that treatments for depression and anxiety disorders can actually stop and reverse it, just overall help with this neuroplasticity therapy. So again, awareness is key. Like, once we know what triggers our anxiety and depression, we can then find a solution, whether it's brain chemistry or, you know, and that place is for meds. You know, I'm obviously not a doctor, but I choose not to take meds because for me, it's just, there's different things that I know now trigger my anxiety and depression, and it took a hell of a lot of time to figure this stuff out. I will do a video about my dealing with addiction and overcoming stuff, depression, anxiety. That's a whole nother video. So a little bit more information about neuroplasticity before I wrap up. This is just kind of useful. It takes 1 to 2 months for a habit to change, and then it takes 3 or more months for it to become a lifestyle and second nature. Because why? Yeah, new pathways are formed. I don't know about you, but I don't want to look back on my life and wish that I had utilized my time more wisely. I want to impact people the best way that I possibly can, and the only way that I can do that is if I'm better to myself and that I become a better me, as cheesy as that sounds. So I hope you learned something. Like I said, my videos will get better. They'll get more personal and more specific. I just wanted to really introduce this information to you because I will be referring back to it. I will share in the description box my sources that I came across and a couple videos that I thought were really helpful and were along the same topic. There's a few videos that I will link down below that there's this woman describing kind of step by step how neuroplasticity helps anxiety. It goes really in depth. Like I said, there's multiple videos on it. So if you're interested in that, I'll link it down below. I encourage you guys to ask questions, comments. You know, I really want to start a discussion about this kind of stuff, and I want to know what you guys think about it, and I want us all to get better together. Like, come on, guys. Next week my video will be about my story with addiction and the science behind addiction and all that jazz, or it'll be about setting goals. I haven't really decided which way I want to go with that yet. I don't know how intimate I want to be with everybody. The whole internet is a big place. But thank you guys for hanging out with me, and remember, just do something that makes you proud today. Make your future self happy.